Maghanda na ng mahiwagang apple juice at makitambay sa mga Yotits dahil walang bawal pag-usapan sa masarap na kwentuhan. Wag Po! Narito na ang mga balitang pag-uusapan natin. Kahit sumigaw pa sila ng Wag Po! McDonald's, itinanggi na sa kanila ng galing ang viral post na tila nagpaparinig sa towel incident ng Jollibee. Mga kwento sa loob ng kusina, ibabahagi sa atin ng isang Wag Poer na matagal nang nagtatrabaho sa fast food industry. Opisyal nang inanunsyo ng PAGASA ang simula ng rainy season. Mga Yotits, may kayakap na po ba kayo sa paparating na mga ulan? Balik Wag Po si Father Nic Austriaco para pag-usapan ng update sa hinihintay nating birnia, bakuna pala laban sa COVID-19.
Alright! Si Neil Vivas, Jusel Pia, Neng Ringor, Ivis Chu, nanonood mula sa Sulat, Eastern Samar, Neil Vivas, Subjects Dumalos, Neng Ringor, Jason Adula, Nagisaram Oderfla, at si It's Gabriel Rob Peñuela, Angelo Isip Christian. Magandang gabi, Marcos D. Nineran po lang, Marie Orsa. Alright, inuna ko na kasi matagal na tayo hindi nakakabasa ng mga nagko-comment. Alright,
welcome po. Si Alan Mindanya, humabol.
Alan Mindanya, of course. Wala ngayon, di na yata nagpaparamdam. Si Mon Samson ng Manila Bulletin. Or
si
Jessica
Conchito Francia, ang daming humabol. Ang daming humabol. Neng Ringor. Hindi ko lang nakikita eh, sorry.
Willie Dictado, Renato Tranquilino, Jeffrey Beltran, at si Eleanor Torregosa Cruz. Yes.
Miro Abala. Miro Abala. Si Malu Prehas.
Uy, si Malu, kapatid ni Henry. Kamusta, Malu?
Willie Dictado, Espinosa Medel, nanonood mula sa Iloilo.
Si Nani Morales sa Cebu.
Alright. Ngayon po mga kapatid ay Biyernes. Ibig sabihin, Tito Manning yun ay
Cebu. Salamat, Jesus, at Biyernes uli.
Salamat, Jesus, at Biyernes ulit. Bago tayo lusubin ng PDEA, baka...
Pinakamahalagang araw ng linggo.
Yan. Pinakamahalagang araw ng linggo. Alright. Lord de Vera po, kasama po natin si Manuel Mogato, ang nag-iisang Pulitzer Prize winner for international reporting. At nasa baba niya po mga kapatid, the best reporter ever, si Tito Ed Linggao. Tito Ed, magandang gabi.
Hello, hello.
At kinagagalak po natin yung balita na si Tito Ed ay hindi po tayo iiwan matapos po ang kalahating oras. Makikipagkwentuhan siya sa atin. Right.
It's a Friday. It's a Friday.
It's a freaking Friday. Bok, anong inino? Parang napaka-refreshing yan.
Parang asarap.
Hindi, Bok, ano? Tubig lang to, tubig. Tubig na sa bote ng ano.
Nasa bote
Ako malaking cup syrup.
Ano yan?
Mentodex Turbo. Yan. At syempre, last but not the least, ang bagong-bago po ang background. Mukhang bagong gupit, bagong background, mukhang bago ang couch. Palakpakan po natin.
Bagong yoga. Bagong yoga.
Bagong. Ang leader po ng kultong Wag Po Earth na magiging puwersa na po sa susunod na halalan, ang retiradong photojournalist at all-around good guy, si Panginoon Melvin Calderon.
Siyempre. Kamusta kayo lahat? Oy, gusto ko rin kamustahin. Tara.
Ganyan ka naman. Talaga.
Si Al Siason, pinakain kami ng longganisa kanina. Genuine talaga. Genuine. May sikla
Anong longganisa? Ilocos? Bigan? Ano?
Galing sa Lawag.
Lawag? Ano yung mabawang ba yan? Mabawang?
Mabawang at saka genuine. Kilala ni Lord yun si Genuine, na singer. GI na GI. Ang dating ng longganisa. Kaya GI, Genuine Ilocano. Yan.
Meron bang peking longganisa, Panginoon?
Meron. Hindi gawa sa Ilocos. Sabi nila.
Uy, magagalit sa yung mga taga-Kalumpit.
May Bulacan sa Bicol.
Bicol at saka
Naku,
Pangasinan.
Di ba? Alaminos longganisa, masarap.
Naku, ang sarap yun. Nakatusok sa
Hindi, sabi mo, Lawag lang ang original.
Paano ka ba nanalo niyan, Panginoon, sa 2022? Yung ibang region, kinakalaban mo.
Oo.
Hindi, kakampi natin yan. Hindi, ano yun, Alaminos. At tinutong mampang tali nila, parang toothpick itsura.
Toothpick,
pero hindi toothpick.
Pero gusto kong longganisa may mga taba-taba.
Uy, siyempre, yun ang masarap. Yun ang masarap.
Oo, yun ang masarap.
Correct.
At higit sa lahat, yung masarap na longganisa yung libre.
Ayun, libre din ang dighay ni Panginoon. Buti na lang hindi natin siya katabi ngayon. At siguro sa sobrang tindi ng dighay niya, nag-freeze ang kanyang video. Alright, so ngayon mga Yotits ay Biyernes, relax lang po tayo. Hindi po kagaya agad-gabi na medyo na-stress si Ed Linggao dahil yung galing Davao ay kung ano ng mga nang-gaslight, kumbaga, ika nga.
Alam mo, Bok, yung mga ganyan, ano naman di ba, ika nga pag naniligaw yung mga lalaki, lahat yan lahat yan pare-parehong kwento. So kailangan mo salain kung sino paniniwala mo sa kanila, kung sino sa kanila yung namumuro at sino sa kanila
Pero Tito Pok, may strategy, parang medyo strategy yung ginawa ni ex-Congressman Andaya Kagabi kasi parang inunahan niya na halos done deal na para kunyari, meron pang magbago isip, pwede niyo sabihin na baka hindi sila tumukod sa usapan, di ba? Ano bang tawag sa ganong term? Nang bakod na.
Oo, sigurista.
Nang bakod na.
Parang nang bakod na. Parang everyone else sa sumunod, hindi totoo yan.
Parang you can't top this.
You can't.
Pero pero maraming mga political analysts nagsasabi na ang mahinang VP si Gibo kasi matagal na wala
Matagal na wala.
12 years, di ba?
Oo.
12 years at saka wala siyang value added kay Sara.
May eroplano siya. Hiram sa San Miguel, sabi.
Although, Bok, di ba, Indian kasi we're trying to look at everything logically. Indian kasi politics is not always logical
Correct.
Indian politics, these are personality decisions So we don't know. Indian, we don't know. At this point, he said, she said lahat Sabi niya. So, siya nagsabi. Maring totoo, maring hindi.
Pero palagay ko, PR disaster yung nangyari sa Davao.
Bakit naman?
Nagpaturok Nagpabakula pa, di ba?
Oo. Ano naman daw
Maraming netizen ang nagsabi na hindi ka naman tiga dyan bakit ka nagpapakuna? So, tumalon ka? Sumingit ka?
Kasi daw, ang kwento, Tito Manny, marami nag-back out, masasayang daw yung bakuna, so nagpatawag na, sino pang hindi pakunado dyan? So, imbis na ibalik ulit nila sa storage, ay pinanturok na lang. Nagkataon, nandun si Bo Gibbs. Yan.
Sabi-sabi lang yon, Tito Lord. Kasi,
Well, they're trying to build
kumakita-
on they're trying to build on that narrative na that's proof daw na malakas talaga siya.
Malakas sila. Kasi yun ang kwento niya.
Yun ang naratibo. Yun ang naratibo niya.
Pero kung
Ayan.
titignan mo yung mga social media post, maraming
Wala.
Maraming nanismaya.
Actually, you typically hear it na sayang ka, Gibo, mga ganun.
Binoto pa naman kita nung 2010. Tapos ngayon
Bumaba.
Tsuwari ka pala.
O sa mga batang hindi nakakilala ko sino si Gilbert Chodoro. Junior na ba? O the third? Ano siya? Siya
Wala.
Gilbert Chodoro. Okay, siya yung dating Defense Secretary ni Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
At Tarlac Congressman.
Carla Congress. Bar top notcher.
Magaling na record siya.
By all
Magaling na
angles.
abogado.
Qualified. Qualified.
Saka pamangkin ni Danding.
Yun lang. At eventually, medyo
Hindi siya
falling out sila.
Hindi siya kinandidato ni Danding.
Si Danding, sinuporta si Pinoy.
Yung pamangkin niya. Isa pang pamangkin niya.
Alala ko pa yan, no? Si Gretchen Coangco, asawa ni Danding, sinabi na, sino po supportahan nyo? Anyone but Gibo Arayco.
Sus Mario, sinabi ba talaga yun?
Sinabi yun, sa TV ko napanood yun, mga Yotits. Anyway, abangan natin ang susunod na kabanata. Napaka-fluid pa ng mga sitwasyon. Pero, next Friday
Pero
ngayon, mga Yotits.
sige lang, pero yung sabi ni kahapon ni Andaya kahapon, ang ginamit ng eroplano mismo ni Juan.
Ni Danding.
Well,
Kasi wala na
si Danding eh.
Well, kay yung sa kasalukuyang bastonero ngayon ng
San Miguel. Si Ramon. Si
Pero,
Don Ramon.
Alam mo, dahil Friday ngayon, mga Yotits, iwan muna natin politika, pag-usapan natin, beer.
Kailangan relax.
Beer, yan.
Si
Pero,
Father Austriaco,
beer,
galing na guest man. Yan,
beer
napakagaling niya.
Beer na may COVID vaccine. Yan. Sa mga marami pong tagasunod ng programa to, alam po natin na ito talaga yung tinatawag na developing story na minomonitor talaga natin. Ed Lingaw, tama, di ba?
Parang every time magigess si Father sa The Chips, ako lang yung tatanong parati ng issue yan.
Ayan. Kasi di ba, ideal sana sa mga takot sa bakuna. Para
the solution to vaccine hesitancy.
Tama.
Diba?
Oo.
Diba?
Beer.
Kailangan itaguyod
Oo. Alcohol is the cause and the solution to everything. Yan. All right. Kaugnay po niyan, kamusta na po kaya ang research ng kanyang tinatawag na beer vaccine? Opo. Alright, kasama pa rin po natin mga kapatid ang tanyag na bahagi po siya na microbiologist. Bahagi po siya ng Octa Research Group at nagtuturo po sa University of Santo Tomas at ilang mga foreign na schools, no?
Sa Providence University sa Rhode Island.
Yan, kasama po natin si
Father.
Father.
Si Father ay graduate ng MIT.
Cambridge. Massachusetts.
Oo.
Hindi mapuwa.
Massachusetts. Hindi mapuwa.
Alright, kasama po natin ang ating suki po. Salamat ulit sa oras ni Father Nic Austriaco. Sir, Father.
Good evening po.
Hi, Father. Good evening po.
Father.
Sorry, makulit kami pag Biyernes
Sorry, Father, ha?
You just made me smile, and I'm learning about Filipino politics, so I enjoy listening to you all.
Ay, huwag yun na pasukin, Father. Sasakit lang po ulo ninyo.
Sasakit ang ulo niya. Sigurado yan.
Baka
mabuti pa
maluha
ang
kayo
hangover
ulit.
kaysa sa politika.
Correct. Father, nasa Pilipinas ho ba kayo? Nasa States?
Oo, dito sa UST na.
Sa UST.
Father, bukas na ho ba yung mga fishbowlan dyan sa likod?
Ha?
Yung mga fishbowlan sa likod, sa may dapitan, bukas na.
This is in the room of the fathers, in the father's residence at UST.
Yan, sa may...
dapat, Lord, dapat minsan si Father ilabas mo dyan sa paligid ng UST. Introduce Father to the exotic food around UST.
Ay, wala na eh.
Wala na ba?
Everything is closed right now.
Tsaka marami ng
yung kailan nga doon sa may loob nung
Sa
tabi ng ospital.
building.
O yung mga McDonald's sa Krispy Kreme, sarado eh.
Tsaka gentrified na siya.
Sa Pinoval, wala na rin.
Hindi na yung hindi na yung
Gentrified na, puro mga fast food, mga coffee shops, mga ganyan. Ilan na lang yung mga, I'm sure si Father, mas maraming alam sa akin yan.
Siyempre, mga bagong lugar na nagbago na hindi tayo nag-standby dito sa lugar na yun. Katulad si Lord, estudyante yan doon. Si Patrick, estudyante rin yan.
Alright, Father, alam ko. Okay, bago pa antokin si Father Nic, ayan. Pa-update lang po, kamusta na ho yung research niyo yung bakuna sa beer?
Yeast. Vaccine.
Yeast.
So today, I went on a tour of the university because we're looking for a laboratory to set up here dito sa UST. Because the next step now is that we have to test the yeast delivery system that we made. So we successfully made it. It took 3.5 months to make it, but now we have to test it in mice. So we're going to get the mice, bring them here to UST, and it will take several months for us to test the vaccine delivery system in mice to see if it works. And if it works, we have to apply for our permission from the FDA to pursue clinical trials dito sa Pilipinas.
Father, yung daga ninyo imported, Tama ho ba? Tama?
Yes, they're from Taiwan. Because so people have asked me, why can't you just get Filipino mice? And I say, well, it's not that it's Filipino or Chinese or anything. It's a genetically defined mouse.
So hindi,
what does that mean, Father? What does that mean, genetically defined mouse? What exactly? Kasi alam namin maraming daga dyan sa UST dahil Espanya eh. Ang daming imburnal dyan eh. What is a genetically defined mouse?
So there are certain mice that have been used by biologists for the last 50 years, and we understand all the genes in that mouse. So you have to get this mouse, this very specific mouse, and because when we test our vaccine candidate on these mice, we have to make sure that we understand the mouse. So that when we test the vaccine, we understand everything that is happening to the mouse.
Parang control mouse.
Exactly, it's a controlled mouse.
Control mouse. Okay,
But
okay.
that mouse only comes from Taiwan, Father?
No, it was developed in the United States, but the distributor in Asia is in Taiwan. That's why we have to purchase it from Taiwan, and I'm still learning about how to order things to the Philippines, and all about the customs and all of the import rules I need to sign in order to get the mice here.
Imagine ko si Father nasa customs.
Ano?
Ilang daga po kailangan nyo, Father?
We will probably get 24.
Uy,
Konti lang.
It's not, in fact, the Philippine government regulates the maximum number you can get. So we will probably get 24, and it'll be 8, 8, 8 for 3 different sets.
3 batches.
3 batches. One of them with the vaccine, one of them without, and then the other one we're still thinking about what to do with the middle batch.
Father, ano mangyayari sa mga daga pagkatapos?
What do you mean?
Yung mga magsusurvive.
They will all, hopefully they all survive. It would be a problem. It would be a problem.
If they don't survive.
The mice do not survive the vaccine, So hopefully they all survive, but they will all be sacrificed at the end, because you have to examine the different organs. You have to make sure that nothing went wrong with the mouse.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, Father, curious lang ako. Anong klaseng vaccine po yung gagamitin po ninyo sa experiment niyo?
It's an oral vaccine with which we developed. So it's a yeast delivery system, but it's oral. So we will actually force the mouse to eat this vaccine. You put it in the mouse, and you force the mouse to inhale or to ingest a very specific amount. And we are deciding how much we will give to each mouse and how often we will give it to each mouse right now. So I have a meeting next week with my collaborators, my team, and we will decide to exactly how we will design the experiment, because nothing like this has really been done in the past.
Pero Father,
So, Father-
hindi po Sinovac, hindi Astra, hindi
Oh, no.
Pfizer.
We're calling it Dominivax.
Wow.
Dominivax.
Dominivax.
Libre mga taga-UST dyan.
Sigurado yun.
Yeah, so there's two reasons for that. So Domini in Latin is of the Lord.
Yeah.
So it's the vaccine of the Lord. And because I'm a Dominican, it makes sense, Dominivax. So if it
Father-
works, you will see it will be basically marketed as Dominivax.
So, Father, ito first stage trial pa lang.
I'm sorry?
First stage trial pa lang. Trial.
Yes,
First
so
stage.
it's called preclinical animal trials.
Mhm.
And this one should last a couple of months. And then if it works, it goes to phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials with volunteers. And then the large one is called a phase 3 clinical trial. And if we would hope to do that in the Philippines.
Interesting.
It's hard because you have to get volunteers, Filipino volunteers, and then you have to get volunteers who are at risk for getting COVID, diba? So you have to choose your barangay well. So there are rules. Which barangay will you test your vaccine in? Because you have to make sure that there is a chance that some people in the barangay will get COVID. And so you have half of them take your vaccine and half of them will just take what is called a placebo, something that looks like the vaccine, tastes like the vaccine, but it's not the vaccine.
It's not a vaccine.
That's right.
Magkakaroon lang sila ng placebo effect.
Father, ako na lang sa placebo.
So that's interesting. So yes, there is placebo effect, but you make sure that you test enough people so that your results will be able to show clearly whether or not there's a placebo effect, if the vaccine is effective at preventing COVID-19.
Father, kung oral, is it in the form of a capsule or drops or ano po ba?
So there's two possibilities. One is it'll be like a sachet, so that's one possibility. The other one is it will be in a gelatin capsule. And to be honest with you, my preference now is in a gelatin capsule because you want to make it look like it's a medical something. Because otherwise people will not really believe that it is a vaccine. So you have to if you put it like this, they think it's only like tea or something like that. So you have to make them see. So there's two choices. Diba? One is sachet, you pour it, put it in your milk, put it in your beer, and then you consume. The other one is you take it in a capsule, you put it in your mouth, and then you consume it, follow it again with milk or with beer.
I believe
Father,
that, Father. Kasi,
Beer vaccine.
So, Father, yung medication niyan, is that 3 times a day or for how many days?
That's a very good question. We don't know that. So that's why we have to design the mouse experiments well to give us a sense of how it would work. And then in the phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials, that is part of the experiment. If you see how much, so you have certain people will take it once a day, certain people will make it once every 3 days for 1 week. And so you have different dosing regimens, and you look to see which one is effective at triggering an immune response. Which is why, for example, the different brands of vaccine, some of them you will see it's after 3 weeks, you have the second dose. Some you have to wait 3 months for the second dose because the clinical trials were different for each one.
Father, I have a question lang about kasi I understand you're waiting for them to ship you the yeast vaccine from
Yeah,
Rhode
my
Island,
students
from the
students
US.
sent it this morning. Yep.
Apo.
Yesterday
I'm
pa.
wondering lang, are they sending you a large amount that you will use for the tests or the clinical trials or the preclinical trials, or will you have to duplicate or replicate it here once it gets here?
So they will just send me the
making your
living.
own?
No, they will send us living cells. And
The
the great
culture.
thing about living cells is that we can grow it up here,
Yeah.
and then we can make as much as we need here at UST.
So you'll duplicate it here. You'll reproduce it here.
We will grow it up here. Yep. And we have the equipment now. I saw the equipment today that we can use to grow these cells up here in the Philippines.
Parang you cook them, di ba? Not naman cook, pero you need a warm environment, warm, humid environment.
So you culture them. It's called culturing. So
there you go.
You give them the yeast food, which is easy. I have it already. And then you just add a little bit. And overnight, you will have a lot of it. And you can grow very large amounts. And once you have a lot, you can store it, you can dry it, you can put it in the refrigerator. There are a lot of things you can do with it.
Sa panaderia, Father, tawag ko nila dyan, yung pinapataas, pinapaalsa. Pinapaalsa, oo.
Yung pandesal.
Yung pandesal. So, Father, pwede rin siya sa bread, if ever, kunyari. Yung vaccine.
Oh, in fact, yeah. So, Saccharomyces is used to make bread, to make beer. So if you wish, and in fact, probably, one of the things we could do if it's safe is that we could make beer from it, right? And then the beer, you would actually make beer from this yeast. And the beer will include the vaccine already, and then you just consume it. But that's just a thoughtful experiment. For it to be a legitimate vaccine, it has to pass all of these clinical trials, and then the FDA has to verify even the manufacturing process, because you have to make sure that every pill or every sachet has the exact same amount, the same efficacy of the vaccine, because otherwise, how will you guarantee that it will work in this person versus in that person?
Father, I have an idea, Father. You make a yeast beer, you make a beer vaccine, put them in cans, and then brand them as Dominicans.
I like that.
Dominicans. Father, I have a question. Kasi when you talk about your students coming up with the vaccine, it almost sounds like it's so easy to make. I mean, you guys did it in 3.5 months in a university laboratory, whereas the other vaccines had to be made by these huge multinational drug firms. I'm wondering exactly how are you and your students able to make this vaccine, this yeast vaccine, when it takes a huge multinational drug company to make the other vaccines?
So actually, even the other vaccines were probably based on research from one laboratory. But what happens is to undertake a clinical trial. So a clinical trial is why you need a company, because you need to have, it's really expensive to do the clinical trial. And if you remember the clinical trial, which was done, for example, with Pfizer, was like 40,000 volunteers, was done in several countries. So no one lab can do a clinical trial. So what happens is that the clinical team, translation team, the scientific team will usually have a pharmaceutical sponsor. And the pharma sponsor, so you see it's Pfizer, Moderna, but it was developed by one laboratory somewhat. And I don't know who the laboratory was. The laboratory gives them the technology, and then they scale it up and they take it to other countries and they test it. And similarly here, I'm already in conversations with Filipino pharmaceutical companies, because in order to scale this up, we would have to have pharmaceutical collaborators in order to help us, not just to manufacture, but also to distribute.
Yeah, the logistics will be mind-boggling, I can imagine.
Well, so unlike, you see, if you look at the Pfizer, Moderna, those are very expensive because the technology is actually quite sophisticated. But for something like a yeast delivery system, like I've said in many other contexts, growing yeast up is quite easy and quite inexpensive. And there are factories already in Cavite and Laguna that grow yeast up, but they grow yeast for bakers who want to make pandesal, for example. So, but you see, the infrastructure is already available in the Philippines to scale up production of a yeast, anything yeast. And so to develop a yeast vaccine in a country like ours is actually something that is easier to do than, say, for example, any other delivery system, especially the mRNA delivery systems, which require very, very sophisticated, very, very cutting edge, and very expensive technology.
Father, ano yung disadvantage ng yeast as carrier for vaccine?
It's actually, so that if you ask me what are the challenges, it's actually not the yeast part, it's the part. What is a challenge, and I will be very honest, is that it's an oral vaccine. So you will notice all of the vaccines that have been used so far are intramuscular injection. And one of the reasons for this is that I want you to realize that you eat many, many, many things, but you do not develop an immune response against all the food you eat. In fact, if you developed an immune response against rice, you would never be able to eat rice again, because every time you ate rice, you would get sick. So this is why when we developed our vaccine, we actually had to add specific things to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein in order to target that fragment to very specific organs of your body in the intestine to allow it to trigger an immune response. So this is why we're still testing it.
Interesting.
But there are so many different technologies in the manufacture of vaccines. You have yung mRNA nga, you also have yung deactivated inactivated viruses. You have
virus.
You have adenoviruses and all that. Where does the yeast vaccine fall under?
That's a completely new system.
Okay.
It's a separate system completely. It's an oral vaccine system. And that's why we have to test it. And that's why you notice, it turns out there are a few other labs in the world who are developing an oral vaccine based on yeast. So there's like 2 or 3 that I know of. They're not all, we're doing similar but not identical vaccine delivery systems. Just like Pfizer and Moderna, they're both mRNA, but they are different. And so there could be several yeast vaccines, each of them slightly different. And so each of the laboratories that is doing it, hopefully will find a combination of elements of the vaccine that will make it effective in humans. So we will see where our vaccine will work. You know, I specifically want it for the Philippines because of the poor in our country. And this is a vaccine that I would like to develop a vaccine that is easily accessible for the poorest Filipino in our country.
And easy to and accessible to what we
Madaling
call this,
ingest. Madaling apply.
Madaling ingest, at the same time, madaling store.
That's correct.
Kasi we really have a problem now. Like Pfizer, it needs a very low.
Minus 80. Minus
80.
So it's colder than Antarctica.
Yours is, it's better. Going back to what you said earlier, that you mentioned it's going to be in capsule and sachet.
Yeah, and it's shelf stable. So you can keep it in your room, in your kitchen, for about 1 to 2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
But don't forget, Father,
refrigeration.
make something like
Ano?
freeze yata ako. Yeah,
Okay.
Don't forget, Father, to make something for us. Dominicans. It's called Dominicans, according to our best journalist.
Like I said, one of these days, we may be able to do something like that. But right now, the goal is the quickest, cheapest, most effective vaccine we can develop for the Filipino people.
I saw some of your interviews, Father. Sabi ninyo ata in your other interviews, baka 35 pesos thereabouts yung bawat dose.
So if you get sa Flora store now in the Watsons, it's 35 pesos. So
wow.
I'm hoping something like 40, 50 pesos, something like that.
Malaking bagay pa rin yun.
You know, in comparison
Malaking bagay
to Moderna would be something like 4,000. This is the pandemic pricing. So after the pandemic ends, we know the price will go up because they have told us that the current pricing strategy is to end the pandemic. So we know the prices will go up. But my hope here is that this is This is again, like I've told people, I have a vow of poverty, so profit is not exactly my goal. For me, it's again for the Filipino people, especially for the poor.
All right.
Okay.
Maraming
Cheers, Father.
maraming
Si Manimogs,
Father
may
Austriaco.
Manimogs. Si Manimogs,
Brother, tatanong ko lang po, ano yung role ng mga pharmaceutical industries? Ano pong pinarami sa inyo?
What do you mean?
Yung sa partnership nyo sa mga pharmaceutical industries,
Yeah.
ano pong gagawin nila? Ano pong role nila exactly?
So what will happen, of course, is that once any research laboratory develops a vaccine, it has to be scaled up so you can produce enough for millions of people. So in our case, when we make it in our laboratory, we will make it so we can test it. So that's only for several hundred people. If you're going to make it for millions of people and you have to do it in a standardized way, you need to have a manufacturing line that is specified by, for example, ISO. So you have to have all of these very a stable manufacturing line that is approved by the FDA, so they can make millions and millions of doses, so that you can distribute it regularly to the Filipinos.
So, Father, you are willing to share the patent of that vaccine?
Yeah. So what will happen is, in fact, I will have a meeting in the next week or so with the patent lawyer of the university. And what will happen is the university will share the patent with a company. So that's usually what happens. So the university will either own the patent. So from work that I did from MIT, I own 5 patents. And so what happens is companies will basically, we will give permission to companies to use our patented genes to develop products, and we will get royalties from those products. That's the kind of relationship that usually happens between a scientific team and a pharmaceutical company.
Father, last question. Kayo lang ho ba ang gumagawa nito sa buong mundo, o may iba pang grupo na experimenting also on yeast vaccine?
I know of one more, at least one other. There may be probably 1 or 2 others, but again, it's just like Pfizer and Moderna. They're 2 mRNA vaccines, but different kinds. And so I know that the other team, the one that I've read about, the other team, they're using a different yeast, different from the one we're using, and they have a different design of the vaccine. So, all of us, there's enough people in the world that we can, that the more the better.
So parang karera pala yan, Father. Father, parang karera pala yan kasi meron kayong kakompetensya.
Yeah, but it's always been about, I always tell the Lord, you're in charge anyway. I'm just going to do the best science we can do, and God is in charge of everything else.
Alright,
Thank
marami
you,
po
Father.
nagdadasal para sa inyo.
Congratulations,
Nic
Father.
Austriaco. Father, nangangamay Nobel Prize
Salamat po.
in Chemistry na to. Thank you, Father Nic.
Father, don't forget Dominican.
Dominican with a can with a big
Yeah.
C.
Yeah.
Dominican.
But if you-
Going
Pero
back,
Father,
Father,
if you sell them in 6 packs, then it becomes Dominicans.
Thank you very much, Ed. I will share that with the Dominicans. I'm
and the
sure
capsule
you
type
Father.
is
about
more
that.
important.
Father, thank you po.
Thank you so
Father Nic.
much.
Cheers, Father.
Salamat.
God bless you. Bye.
Salamat
Bye-bye,
po,
Father.
Father.
Alright, mula beer, punta tayo sa manok. Ayun, no?
Jollibee!
Manok, bakit naman Kentucky ang pinakita mo?
Salamat.
Hindi.
Salamat, Marjorie.
Chicken
Joy.
Chicken Joy. Di ba?
Itong tuturing nating
Towel Joy.
Jolly Bimpo scandal.
Jollibee po
Yan.
scan. Towel gate.
Yan. Ano lang yan Korean inspired.
Oo. Uy, pero
Bakit
may
Korean?
kumakalat na may kumakalat
Bibimbap.
na peking mga Yotits.
Yeah.
Peking ad na supposedly guys sa competitor, McDo, na parang our competitor just threw in the towel, no, na kung totoo nga yan, medyo bad taste nga to, pero mukhang hoax nga daw siya, no? Kasi parang kicking naglabas rin ng statement ang McDonald's. Oo.
Na
Hindi raw sila, hindi ang nag-ano niyan. Medyo kasi, medyo, huwag
Bad
ganun,
taste.
tol.
Bad
Oo,
taste.
bad taste.
Mhm. Bad taste. Pero ito, may mga nagpapadala pa rin sa akin ng ano eh. Siguro kala nila wala na akong pampunas dito. Anyway, mga Yotits, ano ba kaya ang posibleng nangyari? Ito, objectively, pag-uusapan po natin ito. Galing, kasama natin ang isang dating insider. Yan, no? Wag po din to, no? At sa ating portion na John Petix, hindi siya magtatanong pero makakausap natin siya. Matagal po siya, ilang taon po siya naging manager po ng isang branch ng Jollibee sa SM North EDSA. Kasama po natin si Ron Francisco. Ron, magandang gabi.
Ron, good evening.
Good evening, Ron.
Yun, no?
Ayun.
Good evening po.
Ano po? Good evening.
11 years.
Good evening.
11
Ayun.
years. My God.
Pero paborito
Ay,
ko rin
11
yung
years.
ginagawa.
Patalo pa.
Pero
Ano
hindi
yan?
pa rin ako nagsasawa. Oh.
Panalo yun.
Mhm. Okay, Ron, nung una mo nabalitaan, o una mo nakita yung video, ano yung naisip mo agad? Naku, sinong sabit nito?
Ako ang kinabahan ako, sabi ko, yare, walang tulugan to doon sa mga manager kasi isang malaking sakit ng ulo yan.
Obviously,
Na parang
pero
paano mo ipagtatanggol na in place naman lahat ng standards, susundin mo na lang, ba't may ganito pa? Kaya ang nung nakita ko yun, sabi ko, hindi ito tawag dito. Merong hindi sumunod do sa procedure
sa store ba yan
Sinadya
o
kaya,
sa
Ron?
factory?
sa store.
Sa store.
Sinadya kaya ito? Sinadya kaya ito? O ano?
Pero
May
base
nalaman
doon sa
nila.
kasi mahilig din ako magbasa ng mga comments. Merong isa, sabi ko, parang ito yung pinakamalapit na pwede. Merong isang nag-comment kasi sabi niya, siguro itong mga kabataang to gusto mag-prank sa TikTok, tapos gumawa ng ganyan. Tapos aksidenteng nailabas nila.
So, si,
ayun,
si-
isa nabasa
parang-
ko, ha?
Okay,
Pero
pero
malaki-
Parang ginawa
Ang
talaga
bread
nila,
nila.
pero
ang breading
Kasabay
ba
tayo.
happens in the store? Sorry.
Yes.
Ang breading happens in the store ba? Okay.
Hmm.
So,
Bok, okay lang ba? Siguro i-atras natin ng konti. Magbigay tayo ng mas na background muna kay Ron. 11 years nga si Ron sa Jollibee, no? Pero that was from when to when and kailan kayo umalis. So Bali Ron is speaking based on his experience in those years that he was in Jollibee.
Yes, baka
Para
may
lang
iba na ngayon, hindi rin natin alam.
para lang makonteksto natin. So we're talking about how what Ron knows of as far as the process was concerned then. Para lang may konti tayong konteksto. Sige po, Ron, sige. Konting background din sa'yo. Sige. So 11 years ka from when to when and
11 years from 2003 hanggang 2014.
Okay. So 7-8 years ago.
Mhm.
So, Ron,
Pero-
yung SOP dyan, nagbago ba? O
Hindi ko sure
standard
pero
na yan?
halos yun din yun eh. Mas iba pa nga nung time namin kasi inabot ko pa yung yung hindi pa computerized na na cash register. Tapos yung mga lutuan namin ng time na yun, yung sinauna pa. As in, hindi yung
Anong
mga
sinauna?
mas modern na
Malaking
ginagamit
kawali?
ngayon. Hindi naman, para lang siyang malaking vat. So kung nakapunta kayo nung mga ibang tawag dito, chicken house na nagluluto ng fryer na malaki, inabot ko pa yun. Ganun nakatagal. Kasi ngayon pag
Pero
nagpunta ka, kamukha na siya nung ginagamit sa mga ibang fast food na may na siya, kumbaga covered na siya, pressurized. Ganon na yung lutuan ngayon. Sabi ko nga,
Mas
inabot ko
mabilis.
pa yun dati na yung open na Kung napapansin nyo, doon sa isang competitor nila na merong old man, ang pinapresent niya doon, may hawak siyang kawali na pressure cooker. Ganon nila niluluto yung chicken doon. Ang alam ko, halos karamihan papunta na doon.
Okay.
Gaano
Ron?
katagal? Ron, gaano katagal niluto noong unang panahon at ngayon? Mga gaano katagal?
15 nung time namin eh. Ngayon yata, mga 10 na lang yata.
Mas maiksi.
Kasi highly
Oo.
pressurized.
Kasi pressurized na siya eh.
Ron, nung nandun ka pa, ano yung proseso? Kumbaga, ano yung galing sa commissary na darating dun sa store at ano yung papilang ng store as far as yung, for example, yung chicken is concerned?
Ano lang siya, as in, dadating siya doon, lalagyan mo ng breading, tapos lutuin
Pero
mo
yung
na.
galing sa commissary, meat lang yun. Meat.
Yes.
Pero
Packed meat
timplado
lang
na, di ba? Timplado na, ilalagay
Oh,
lang
timplado
ng
na
breading.
yun.
Oo.
Yun yung nakita mo sa supermarket, binibenta.
Yes, binenta siya sa supermarket nung
Oo.
panahon ng pandemic, kung natatandaan niyo.
So pag
Nalala ko,
dumating sa
bumili
store
din
yung
ako
ano,
nun, tapos niluto ko.
mhm.
Iba lasa, no?
Iba pa rin yung luto
Iba
ng
lasa.
ano.
Pero pag
cooker
dumating
nila.
pag dumating yung meat sa store, manually inaano yan isa-isa, binibreading isa-isa ng
Yes.
isang worker sa store.
Mhm.
Isa-isa yan ginaganon ganon.
Tapos ang ano pa dyan, kaya minsan marami akong noon na medyo nakakatunggali na customer kasi ang nakakalimutan nila sa isang buong chicken, meron lang 2 thigh. Gusto nila kaagad lahat thigh. Nalala ko yun, may sinabihan ako noon kasi talagang hindi ko na natiis dahil talagang halos yun ang problema doon sa iba. Porke ba sa fast food ka nagtatrabaho, mamaliting ka, tatapak-tapakan ka, sabihan ka na wala kang alam, tapos sabihin mo, kailangan lahat ng thigh. Parang hindi na ako nakapagpigil na sabihan ko na, ma'am, sa isang chicken po, meron lang 2 thigh. Paano natin ilalabas lahat na puro thigh yan? Mas madalas pa mangyari, pag nag-open yung store, pagpalagay mo na sa nilabas mo na chicken sa 100 buo na chicken, so ang lumabas lang doon is 200 pieces na thigh lang yun. Parang ganun. Paano kung yung first 100 customers mo umorder ng tig 2 piece na thigh? Di syempre wala kang isuserve sa susunod na mga oras. Tapos pipilitin nila maglabas ka, yung kasi naman yan, ganito naman yan. Pag ilalabas mo yan is naka-batch yan ng grupo. So pipilitin mo ilabas ngayon yung para sa kinabukasan. Yung para sa kinabukasan, hindi pa ready yun. So pag niluto mo siya ng hindi ready, doon nga ilalabas yung may mga nahihilaw. Kasi frozen yan.
May isang tanong lang ako. Pag dumating ang chicken, galing sa komisary ng Jollibee, nakapack ba yan? Individually pack?
Nakakat na siya.
Nakakat na.
Pero ibig ata sabihin ni Melvin naka-pack siya individually or isang buong malaking plastic bag ng
sa supermarket, ganun itsura nun. Yun na yun. Parang natanda ako sa loob ng binenta sa supermarket is 8 pieces na naka-vacuum seal.
Vacuum seal.
Tapos yung pieces na yun, for example, lahat thigh, lahat wing, gano'n.
Pero syempre, pag diniliver sa'yo yun, nakakount yun. 'Di ba?
Yeah.
Kung mapapanood nyo yung isang YouTuber na cook, in-explain niya kung ilang piraso makukuha nyo sa isang manok. Parang ang nai-discuss niya is 8. So, yung 8 na yon, imo-multiply mo, parang ganong karaming manok yung niluluto mo sa isang araw. Hindi pwedeng dadating sa'yo na 1,000 pirasong thigh. Imposible yun. Kasi ang manok hindi puro thigh lang. Unless genetically modified na puro thigh lang yung manok.
Para sa octopus.
Okay. So, Ron, yung pagkakaluto doon sa manok na may tuwalya, parang tingin mo ba sa Jayon? Kasi mukhang komplikado ang gagawin mo para
korteng manok siya pa.
Parang tingin mo ba sinadya Ron o parang may nahulog lang? Posible ba
Ako,
ganyan
sa tingin ko hindi yan nahulog kasi parang kinorte.
Oo nga
Kinortihan talaga. Kinorte
Kaya
yung manok.
ngayon nga yung sa nabasa ko nga na comment, pinakamalapit nga na may naglaro.
Okay. Tapos, Ron, pag investigasyon na ganyan, well, ngayon may mga CCTV na yung mga kusina, no?
Meron.
Paano yun? Hahanapin kung sino ang manager nasa shift, sino nasa manukan.
Basta ganun yan. May strategic na pag-i-investigate yan. Naka-in place na yan. Yun nga yung pinag-usapan namin kasi kung maaalala nyo, yung asawa ko is naging manager din. Pinag-usapan namin dalawa na hindi ganun ka-updated yung procedure kasi yun nga dahil do sa interview nyo kagabi do sa isang taga-PR na oo tama malamang yung law department yung gumawa nung statement kaya medyo sabihin nating matigas hindi malambot dapat sumama doon kahit paano yung PR nila. Ayun. Pero matagal na in place yan. Nandun na ako, meron na yan. May mga procedures na yan. Anong gagawin mo? To? Actually, isa sa nakapagpaalis sa akin dyan sa work na yan. Kasi yung merong Food Safety Act of 2013 ba o 2014. Masyadong harsh yung batas na yun.
Hasap. Hasap.
Ano sabi?
Basta yun, masyadong harsh yun. Malaki yung chance na pag merong namatay do sa na poison mo
Kumain.
nung product mo,
Ikaw na.
kasama ka makukulong, pati yung mga boss mo. Sabi nung batas.
Oo. Okay, Ron, ano tawag dito? Sa 11 years mo noon sa fast food chain, meron bang nangyayari na, well, medyo ano pa lang yung social media noon, ano? Pero meron ba, may naalala ka nangyayari na medyo ganito ang scale? Ganito yung... Wala.
Kung doon sa pinanggalingan ko, talagang wala kasi kahit papano, hindi sa medyo alaga namin yung mga tao namin. Yung nagbabasa nga ako ng mga comments, sabi ko, meron pa rin pala ng mga ganyan. Kasi nung araw, merong notorious na mga stores na alam namin, kung sabihin mong yung mga labor code, medyo hindi nila sinusunod na maigi. Meron ganon.
Alam mo, pinag-usapan namin kagabi, Ron, may isang suspetsa kami na malamang yung branch na yon, hindi lahat ng tao doon 100% for the organization ng
Hindi
branch
imposible. Lagi namang merong ganun. Laging merong ganun na hindi talaga
Kasi
susunod
mo
sa'yo.
inside job eh. Kasi kinortehan
Posible.
parang manok, yung labakara, dinifry, dumadating yung manok na yun. Nakapack yun eh.
Pero yun nga, ang
pagkakalam ko,
hula nga namin dyan, may naglaro. Kasi hindi natin maaalis yun. Ang mga nandyan mga kabataan.
Oo. Tsaka,
Ron,
di ba, may checklist, di ba? May mga checklist
Oo,
yan. Bawat
kompleto yan sa checklist.
Mm.
Pagdating sa ISO certified sila, so hindi pwedeng ganun-ganun lang yan. Unless meron talaga naglaro. Ang hindi naman sa ang problema rin ngayon is hindi na ganung nababantayan na ng management yung buong kasi medyo nababawasan din yung nagbabantay na managers dahil kamukha nga nung isang kausap ko kanina, dati doon sa isang store na yon, ang nagbabantay na manager per shift is 3. Ngayon, 2 na lang. Kasi, syempre, mentras bumaba ang benta niyan, nababawasan din ng tao yan.
ang tao.
Kaya nga, yun yung nga sinasabi ko. Nung parang may nag-comment ako sa isa, sabi ko, hindi naman kawawa dyan si customer lang. Ang kawawa din dyan yung mga empleyado dahil mentras walang bibili dyan dahil may nangyaring ganyan, bababa ang benta, maraming hindi na makakapasok. Kasi syempre nga, hindi ka naman pwede magpasweldo nang wala kang benta. Saan mo kukunin yung papasweldo mo kung wala kang benta? Yun ang hindi naintindihan ng iba.
Sa tingin mo ba, Ron, may malaking impacto sa...
Meron yan.
Banda?
Pero malalagpasan din yan kasi maraming loyal.
Tulad
Saka
ni
kung yun nga sinasabi nung sa PR
3
kagabi.
times a week. 3 times a
Ayun
week
nga
ako
po,
dati
sabi nga, yung sa PR kagabi, kung mas magagawa nila ng paraan na makabawi, magmadali na sila.
Mm-hmm.
Ron,
3-piece chicken joy agad.
Ron, I have a question na...
Yung free chicken joy.
Bok, tanong ko lang, Ron, in your experience, is there any way na... Is there any believable way na minalaglag lamang or by mistake na naluto yung tuwalya? Is there any room for that?
Hindi pwede.
Sa experience ko, imposible kasi malayo lahat yan
At saka paano siya, kung malalaglag, pwede mo magkakaroon ng breading yun. Kung lalaglag na lang.
Kahit sabihin mong na bread mo siya,
Alam ba, pamulas ni Lord.
kumorte ng ganun
Nalaglag, bigla. Hindi pwede.
Oo.
Kumbaga, Bok, ganito,
Talagang-
Ron, kumbaga ganito. Dumating yung from the commissary yung vacuum sealed na mga chicken pieces. I suppose i-defrost yan, di ba? Or something like that, di ba?
Yes.
I-unpack, tapos paano yun? Isa-isang kukunin, tapos ilulublob sa breading,
I-bread,
igagano'n sa breading.
Yes.
Tapos
I-check mo
saka
pa ngayon kung undersize siya.
So ginaganon pa yan, one by
Ginaganon.
one.
Siyempre, i-check mo. Kung halimbawa, mamaya may broken bones yan. Check mo yun. Siyempre, you want to
Talaga?
give the best. Kaya i-check mo isa-isa. Kaya nga, imposible na may nakalusot na ganun. Unless
Okay. That's
meron
clear
ng isang
now.
tao
Sige.
talaga na may gustong gawin yun.
Oh,
So may
talagang
individual
ano sila
inspection siya. May individual inspection bago
Oh, by
i-defy.
eye. Kasi hindi naman sa naalala ko, yung Yung pinag-uusapan nga kanina nila Lord na ano, yung sundutan ng fishball doon sa likod ng UST. Merong store doon eh. Nag-duty ako doon ng ilang buwan. Dahil fixed duty doon na ano, na kokonti lang talaga dahil mababa ang benta. Merong times si manager ang nagre-relieve sa break ng crew. Kaya ako, meron akong times noon, 1 hour akong gumagawa ng chicken.
Kahit manager ka, no?
Oo, kasi walang choice eh. Merong ganun talaga.
Si
So,
Willie Dictado,
branch.
Willie Dictado sabi niya, 33 years of employment, ang tawag namin sa kaso na yan, horse playing without horse.
Tama. Parang horse with no name yan.
Para ko.
So talaga sinadya. May nagbiro.
Tansya ko pero
May nagbiro.
hindi din natin masabi kasi unless merong ano talaga, merong may intention, hindi natin alam. Pero
Galit
ano
sa
yan,
manager.
posibleng ganun. Kamukha nung time ko, sa akin nun, naalala ko, ako yung sentensyador nila nun eh.
Sino yung pinakamatinding
Anong
sinintensyahan mo? Anong kaso?
Ano, edi yung
Anong
nahuli
ginawa?
namin na ano, nagtatago siya ng pera sa cup niya.
Sa cup?
Sa ano yung sombrero?
Sombrero.
May nahuli kaming ganon.
Hindi ko na pala gagawin yun.
Hindi naman sa ano
Bistado na pa yung style na yan.
yung security office nung malaking mall dyan sa QC, extension ka agad ng station ng PNP. Kaya pag ni-report mo doon sa security nila na may nangyaring ganito, diretso ka himas rehas.
Ano kaya posibleng pananagutan ng manager, Aaron, nung branch na yon?
Depende pa rin yan kasi hindi naman sa ako hula ko lang kasi solo duty na yan Baka ang tanong doon, anong ginagawa ni manager nung time na yon para mangyari
Anong ibig sabihin ng solo duty?
May mga pangyayari na ngayon dahil nga sobrang bagsak ng benta, isang manager na lang ang nagbabantay.
O minsan
Kasi
yung
masama din pala yung masyadong mura ang mga pagkain. Kasi nababawasan ng tao
Siyempre, kasi kailangan mo pagkasyahin
ng presyo
dun.
ng Jollibee ngayon, Yung pala,
pero
nabawasan ng
Pero
tao.
lumiit, Panginoon, lumiit.
Lumit.
Burger.
Parang pandesal yan ang pandesal, dati malaki. Palit ang palit. Pareho pa rin ang presyo, pero palit ang pandesal.
Naalala ko naman sa pandesal, hindi naman sinusukat yan, ginagramo yan. Ang tanong dyan, gaano karaming pampaalsa yung ilalagay mo? Siyempre, mas lumalaki siya, mas maraming pampaalsa.
Pero mabalik ako sa usapang, tinitimbang pala mga bawat isang manok, isang piraso, Kung tama sa sukat, may balimboto, ano pala yan? Napaka-rigid pala bago makalabas ng lutuan yan.
Quality control, Panginoon. Quality control.
Mahal siya. Very, very rigid ang quality control nila.
Sobra talaga ang quality control. Kaya nga, para makalusot yan, merong nangyari.
Okay. Ron, last question. Tingin mo, gaano katagal bago makalimutan na ulit ang issue na to?
Well, sana months kasi kawawa naman yung mga nababawas sa trabaho ngayon dahil bumaba ang benta.
Months?
Hindi lang sila. Hindi lang sila.
Sigurado nga yung
Lahat ng delivery affected.
Sinarado nga yung branch, di ba?
3 days.
Sinarado yung branch for the investigation and kung ano pa man. Pero pwede magbukas pa ulit yan. Ang lang dyan is yung dati nilang 1,000 na customer, magiging 1,000 pa rin ba? Baka mamaya less than 500.
Siyempre, matatakot ka nang kumain doon.
Yun, kaya yun ang nakakatakot dyan. Yung mga taong talagang nagpunta lang doon para magtrabaho, tapos magtrabaho para sa pamilya, magkakatrabaho pa ba sila?
Correct.
Yun ang kawawa.
On that note, wala na po tayong oras. Ron Francisco, maraming salamat sa kwento mo.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Maraming
Thank you,
salamat, Ron.
Happy weekend.
Happy weekend din, Ron.
Thank
See
you.
you
Hello
next
kay
week.
Ella. Yan. Alright mga Yotits, shabu ulit ngayon. Salamat Jesus at Biyernes ulit. Okay, kung ano man ang gagawin niyo ng weekend, stay safe and be
Happy.
good.
Weekend.
Alright.
Ayan.
Anong
Kamusta
plano
kay
mo bukas,
Brian
Panginoon?
Grajeda?
Yan.
Bukas?
Oo.
Mamamangka. Sa dalawang ilog.
Mamang ka. Ayan, salamat po sa mga nag-comment. Ayan, Tito Manny Mogato, may gusto ka bang batiin?
Wala naman. Si,
Ayan.
si Nani Morales, ang Cebu.
Hello. Erwin Gonzaga, D. Chano, Jonathan Corpus. Ito, binamadali natin ha. Si Don Lorenzo, si Arnold Lee, Oji Navalta, si Ipe de la Paz, magandang gabi, Fides Pasco, at Eds
Sakura Javier.
Barcelona. Ayan, Sakura Javier, of course. Ayan, magandang gabi po sa inyo. Wala na po tayong oras. Ito po
At
ang...
saka si Nato. Kamusta kay Nato at saka
Sinato.
kay
Binati natin kanina si
Eleanor
Nato.
at saka kay Julian.
Eleanor at Julian. Alright, mga Yotits. Ingat po tayo lahat. Ito mga wag po. Wag po tayo mga kalimot na matulog at mag-ingat. Good night.
See you
Good
next week.
night.